Oh, we are so back. This is today's Arsenal transfer show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time for the first time in a couple of weeks. It feels good to be back. It feels new to be back. You may notice some differences and changes to the surroundings, as you guys and girls all well know. I moved house about 6 months or so ago, and during that 6-month period, we've been kind of working to try and create a dedicated space for the podcast and for work and stuff. And so this is the efforts, this is the labor of love that we've had going on in the background for a little while. You may remember that we did some shows, you could hear some construction going on in the background, and this is, of course, that room. We basically had a garage conversion and turned it all into a new podcast studio and a place to work as well. There is, you notice, a space behind me here. This gap kind of to my right, your left possibly, or the way you're looking at this, and you may be thinking, where have the scarves gone? Well, you may notice there's some scarves over there. We're going to effectively try and put kind of like in an office, we're going to put a towel rail. Yeah, a towel rail in an office, I know. But it's going to be used to hang the scarf. So for those of you that I know have donated and very kind in giving and handing over some scarves, we're going to create a space just here as soon as possible. It was the missus actually came up with that brilliant idea, so credit to her for that. But we're going to have a space for some of the scarves to be put up below the logo. This is not a new logo. Those that have been listening to the channel for a little while know that we've had this logo for quite a while, but I haven't been using it since we moved house because there wasn't really a place to install it, but now there is. But yeah, it's great to see. And of course, I am now back from my holidays in Canada, hence the Vancouver Whitecaps shirt that I've got on right now, which was brilliant. It was a brilliant trip. It was a much needed trip. It was a break that was well timed. A lot of people have been commenting on how well timed the trip was, because it wasn't quite like I've really missed loads that's gone on. I want to talk about that in a bit, of course, as well. But I think it's important to point out that I couldn't care what was going on Arsenal-wise. I needed to take myself out of the loop. I needed to take myself out of the chaos that is, of course, the world of Arsenal. And I needed to just detox and try and stay away. And I did stay away pretty much for the most of it. You know, I dipped in and out of Twitter a little bit. I absolutely had to comment on the year anniversary of Kevin Campbell's passing, which, of course, happened while I was away. In fact, one of the programs that is up there is the celebration program for the very sad passing of our dear friend Kevin. And also the news that Santi Cazorla would score in the amazing fixture for Real Oviedo. To see them rise, I almost thought about wearing the Real Oviedo shirt today, but that will come at a later point. Of course, you guys and girls know I'm a massive fan of Santi Cazorla, so seeing him do what he did was also brilliant. I haven't watched any Club World Cup matches, like any of you, I imagine. And I managed to stay away from most of what was going on. I then basically dived straight into news yesterday as I was coming back and tried to round up as much as I could and reintegrate myself. I was aware of what was going on from just having notifications on to a degree, but I tried to turn my phone off as much as I could throughout the trip. It was great. If you've got any questions about it, I'm sure we can tackle more of those if you are interested in part 2, but I don't want to delay part 1 any further because I know that you've been starved of 8 a.m. musings around transfers. So let's not waste any time and jump straight into today's slides and go through it. Please make sure, if you haven't dropped a like on the show already, to have done so. Do make sure that you subscribe. We are back. We're doing shows 8 a.m. every day. I had some fantastic tweets and messages yesterday. There was a brilliant one, in fact, I should probably give a shout out to. I don't even know if their partner knows, but Mandy tweeted me to let me know that thank goodness my partner can now stop complaining about you being missing. So for those partners out there that have been missing the dulcet tones of the channel at 8 a.m. every morning from your other halves, I can say I am sorry that I am back, but we're back and you've lost them for your 8 a.m. mornings again. But thank you for all the kind messages that did indeed come through. So yes, this was the main message that I got. You haven't missed anything. That's what I got. A lot of tweets that just said, you haven't missed anything. And I thought, well, that's going to be a pretty boring show. It's going to be a pretty dull, unenjoyable episode to talk through all the things that haven't happened. So I thought maybe I would put together as many slides to actually discuss what has happened. Because it turns out, despite everyone saying I haven't missed anything, that actually I've missed quite a lot. Quite a lot has actually happened. And so we're going to talk about all the things that have happened while I've been away over the course of the next half an hour or so. I'm also going to tell you that we are going to have a phone-in show today. Not on this show specifically. This is just going to be the news. But later on today, around 5, 6 o'clock, probably, let's say 5 o'clock UK time, we're going to have a phone-in show. So if you want to come on, if you like those phone-in shows, set your alarms, 5 p.m. UK time. We will have a dedicated phone-in show at 5 o'clock this afternoon. So we're going to have that a little bit later on today. So for those of you that have missed the phone-ins, that want to jump on the show, give your thoughts on what's going on in the world of Arsenal, tell me that, in fact, you've been very bored over the last few weeks. We're going to be doing a phone-in show a little bit later on this afternoon as well. We are very much back. We're getting straight into things and not leaving any stone unturned. So one of the things that did happen just before I went away, and I kind of dropped a little bit of a Twitter bombshell before I left, and then kind of just left the grenade, if you like, hanging there with the pin out, and then just dove out of existence for a fortnight, was on the day that I left for Canada. You may remember that was our last live show. And you may remember, in that live show, it was the night of a lot of stories surrounding the Madrid talk. There was a lot of stories about Real Madrid being interested in Martín Zubimendi, and that calls have been made and discussions. And in that morning show, I kind of just hadn't at that point heard anything to suggest there was anything real about it that was going on. And we kind of discussed that, and I wasn't worried. Basically, I arrived at Heathrow Airport, and then more of these stories had obviously emerged. And I was like, right, before I go, I'm going to make 2 more quick phone calls to a couple of contacts of mine just to kind of ease my own nerves before I jump on a plane and really switch off. And I basically got told that these reports surrounding Real Madrid and unofficial talks and calls being made, and Alonso in particular being very keen on Zubi, that there was actually truth to these stories. And so we quickly, I sent the information into my desk, and they very kindly wrote up the piece for me while I was about to jump on a plane and put it out. Obviously, the panic and the frustration and the angst was very quickly quelled in the coming days, when obviously it, as we have been saying for quite a long time, it would have been a massive shock for this deal not to have happened. And Arsenal are, of course, now expected to sign Martín Zubimendi. And certainly when I got back yesterday and I started getting back to work again, making some calls again, speaking to some contacts yesterday for the first time when I did return, I got back home about 11 a.m. yesterday morning. So it gave me an afternoon to get back reintegrated, contacting some people that I know, and trying to get myself back into loop ahead of today's start and tomorrow being back at FL as well. And obviously this is a deal that is expected to go through. I know our good friend of the show, Charles Watts, has suggested that he has been told that there is a feeling that he will take the number 36 shirt. Not 100% confirmed, Charles wants to point out, of course, but there is a good chance that number 36 will be his number, and that there'll be an announcement, of course, in July. We've always talked about July being a very key month because of the accounting situation at lots of different clubs, not just, of course, Arsenal. And that's why June in particular has been quite quiet in terms of getting deals done, and the confirmation of deals is more likely to happen in July. But that gives Arsenal a very tight window, to complete those deals, because we fly to Asia on July 19th. Our first game is, I think, July 24th. And so therefore there is quite a tight window. The players actually will be going on a Spanish Marbella trip. They return to training on July 7th, I'm told. And there'll be a trip to a warm weather training camp for a small period of time before they, of course, go and go away to do that. So, yeah. But number 36, maybe, not 100% confirmed. Charles very clear, pointing out that he's just kind of heard that that's a bit of a rumour, not 100% confirmed, but 36 could indeed be his number with the club. So that's the Zubi stuff. The other player that is expected to, of course, sign is Kepa Arrizabalaga, the Bournemouth goalkeeper of last season on loan from Chelsea, but will be signing from Chelsea in a £5 million deal. Arsenal getting their backup goalkeeper done very quick, very early, which is obviously a very good bit of news for Arsenal. They don't have to worry themselves like they did in 2024 when they spent the whole window just really trying to look at potential deals. Jean Garcia, of course, was the main name, and then they ended up signing Neto on loan. This is really good for Arsenal to get that player done early in the window. They don't have to worry about it. It's done, it's dusted, and they can focus on other things, and there is an expectation that this as well will be announced by the club very, very soon indeed. £5 million for Kepa. It's an absolute no-brainer, and a backup keeper that offers Arsenal a reasonable amount of quality, more so than they've probably had from the backup position with Neto, certainly so, and closer to that of what Ramsdale, of course, was offering at the club last season. The other big bit of news, of course, is that Myles Lewis-Skelly has signed a brand new contract, and that announcement is also expected very soon. Charles Watts broke this story. He's been very busy while I've been away, Mr. Charles. But Lewis-Skelly also signing a brand new contract. That means, of course, Andrea Berta in his opening months of his time with the club has confirmed that Gabriel has signed. Lewis-Skelly has signed. There is really good feeling about Saka and his future. William Saliba, there is also confidence on talks regarding the Frenchman's future at the club. Leandro Trossard is also said to be in discussions over a potential improvement of his deal. We know that Gabriel Martinelli's future is one, of course, to keep an eye on. I haven't included a slide specifically on those links between Martinelli and Bayern because I've not been able to confirm much about that at all. And I would be surprised to see Martinelli leave. Certainly, it's the feeling that the club wants to add rather than replace during this window as well. So Myles Lewis-Skelly signing a brand new deal, really, 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 really good news for Arsenal. And he will become one of the, among those that are in the brackets of payment structures that are that of starters. So a very, very highly paid young player. And a massive congratulations to him and his family, of course, on this news. Sad news for Arsenal is that Carlos Cuesta is, of course, leaving and has left, in fact. He has left to join Parma as their new head coach at just 29 years of age. It's kind of making me feel, as a 30-year-old, rather young, when, of course, an Arsenal coach who's younger than I and many others that listen to the channel, of course, and the colleagues of mine, is off to be a head coach at a club like Parma, massive club, huge history, of course. They've got their links to Arsenal from the 1990s, but was well likely this will have been a huge blow to Mikel Arteta. Congratulations to Carlos Cuesta and, of course, his situation at the club. But Arsenal, I think, will be looking to replace him. Who that is, we don't know. We've mentioned Santi Cazorla already. We do know that there is a really good relationship between Arteta and Santi Cazorla, but don't know about his playing plans. We don't know if he plans to play on next season in La Liga with Real Oviedo and help them try and stay in the division for another season, or whether he is going to indeed retire. He's 40 years of age now. But there's been other links to other coaches in the past. Gabriel Hentze, of course, former Manchester United player, was linked to the club and previously was thought to maybe be on the club's radar. And there are other coaches, of course, that the club have been looking at as well. They may not even choose to replace Carlos Cuesta. I think that would be a bit of a mistake, but we will have to wait and see on this story, and certainly we'll be seeing if Arsenal move to replace the youngster. But the likes of Miguel Molina, of course, and Albert Stuvenberg are still very much with the club, Nicolas Jova, and others too. So there are still plenty of coaches, believe me, at the club, but Carlos Cuesta is sadly no longer one of them. Moving into more of the kind of players and outgoings, Thomas Partey, his future still very much uncertain at this point. Arsenal, of course, released their list of players that they had indeed decided upon their futures, and Thomas Partey, Chloe Kelly, and Jimmy Gower were the players, of course, that the club are still looking to try and continue with, and discussions over their futures do remain. There's been reports this week that Mikel Arteta is set to meet face-to-face with Partey about his future. Certainly, we've heard from him that we do know that he is wanting him to stay. Partey is wanted at the club by Mikel Arteta. However, if he is to leave, and certainly there has been a more of a sense in the last kind of couple of weeks that his future may not be as secured. It's been a real kind of 360. We began a couple of months ago with the feeling that Partey was going to go. We then had this huge 180 spin as Arsenal then decided, and Arteta in particular, that he wanted to keep Partey and the discussions were going in a positive direction. However, it appears that the issue is regarding Thomas Partey that, well, he obviously wants improvement in his wages. It's his last big kind of contract as a 31-year-old, if you like. But Arsenal aren't really willing to give him an improvement in his wages whatsoever. But there is interest, of course, from Turkey, from Saudi, from Barcelona. I think there was as well mentioned as well in the players' potential options to be at a new club next season. And it's going to come down to whether or not his desire to stay at Arsenal is greater than that of his desire to earn more money in this next contract of his. But discussions are set to take place on whether or not he stays. If he does go, Arsenal will need to replace him. We are aware, of course, that there is interest in Agume, of course, Lucien Agume of Sevilla. Very impressive 23-year-old defensive midfielder, has impressed in La Liga and would be a very good replacement for Partey. I did a little bit more digging actually around him yesterday and watched a fair few more clips and looked into the data of Agume, and he does impress actually quite a lot. Douglas Luiz, we know, has also been a player that Arsenal have been heavily linked with in the past. Maybe interest in him could be revived, but Thomas Partey's future at the moment, at least, it seems is heading towards the exit door. But that, again, could change as it has done over the last 3 to 4 months. The other player, of course, linked with the move to Arsenal is Jorrel Hato, another player who's been linked a lot with Arsenal over the last couple of years. Ajax youngster, one of the youngest players ever to kind of lead his side and become a starting figure in that Ajax team, despite even their record of promoting younger players into their squad. He's a player that Arsenal like a lot. However, this one is a little strange for me, with Myles Lewis-Skelly having risen to the heights that he has risen to, the new contract he's going to be signing. Hato is a left-sided defender, playing majority of his games as either a left-back or a left-sided centre-half. There's no situation I can really see Ricardo Calafiori leaving. There's certainly been no indication that Calafiori is going to be going. Zinchenko's future is still up in the air. He may leave. We know that there's been interest from the likes of Borussia Dortmund and AC Milan. Also, more recently, Fulham have also registered an interest in him, and he could go. Jakub Kiwior is impressed in this last kind of 6 months, if you like, of his season with Arsenal. And even though there's interest from Germany and Italy, to my knowledge, I think the club are very happy with Jakub Kiwior unless they get a significant offer for him. That could change the future of Hato, or maybe vice versa. Maybe it's Hato comes in and the club are more open to offers for Kiwior. But if Arsenal are to bring in a defender, I would think it'd be more of a right-sided defender than a left-sided one. With the fitness issues that both Jurrien Timber and Ben White have suffered, you would think that it would be more sensible to kind of go down that route than of a left-side defender. But he is a very, very good player, and if Arsenal were to sign him, they would be bringing in a very impressive young player, but they already have one on that side. So let's go to the exciting bit, which is, of course, that forward line and the left sides. Let's start with that, shall we? Rodrygo and Nico Williams. Well, let's cap off the Nico Williams bottle, if you will, because he is in talks over a potential move for Barcelona. Athletic Club are demanding, of course, the release clause and still would like to keep Nico Williams at the club as well, of course. And I think that is also another side of the element of Arsenal's interest elsewhere in other targets, because Nico Williams is not going to be joining Arsenal now, despite the really appreciation for Nico Williams. Arteta is a big fan of him. But the one player that Arsenal do have a genuine, very real interest, as you have been told for the last however many weeks, is Rodrygo. And this is one I think the club are going to be very patient about. If you think your mind's back, close your eyes, if you will, and think back to when you were 12 years younger in 2013 and Arsenal signed Mesut Ozil. That was a deal that happened because of a number of circumstances and situations falling into place. Real Madrid, of course, wanted Gareth Bale that season, and they had to sell to bring that player in. And they, of course, have already brought in Mastuano, a very exciting youngster from River Plate that Xabi Alonso has a lot of feeling for. We know that the other day in the Club World Cup that Rodrygo didn't play a single minute, and Arda Güler started on that right-hand side, and maybe there's a feeling that his profile is more appreciated, if you like, by Xabi Alonso, and that could open up the potential for Rodrygo to play more games at another club this summer. If this is going to happen, I don't expect this to happen quickly. I think this will be a player that Arsenal are willing to be patient on, to see the layer of the land and kind of get the feeling, of course, that they can get one of the world's most highly appreciated wide players, but it won't be one that happens quickly. I think this is one that will, if happens, will drag on towards the latter stages of the window and could be a risky one for Arsenal to try and complete. Because if they do want to go for Rodrygo and want to wait on Rodrygo, it may mean that other players on the market that they have had interest in, like Bryan Mbeumo, Antoine Semenyo, amongst others, could go elsewhere. in that time, and that they miss out on other targets because they wait for Rodrygo and maybe wait for a player that never happens. Rodrygo's the feeling I get around Rodrygo is that he wants to stay. He wants to fight for his place. He wants to play for Real Madrid. I'm not getting, as I do get the sense with other players, that Arsenal is the priority, that there is a sense that they want to come and play for Arsenal. The sense I get around Rodrygo is that he would love to continue to be a key figure and a key starter at Real Madrid. Now, if that's not possible anymore, if that's not a reality anymore, does that change his view, his setup, his mindset? Potentially. But do Arsenal want to risk a window, a position of real importance for a player who would cost, the suggestions are in the region of 90 million euros to get a deal done, so around 72 odd million quid, a Nicolas Pepe level of money, of course, but for a player with far more pedigree than Nicolas Pepe, of course, at his point in time of his career, still have a very good age bracket as well. If Arsenal signed Rodrygo, it would be one of the signings of the summer. There's no doubt about that. The realistic potential of this transfer, though, is what is in question. But I can see why Arsenal would want to be patient on this front. Left wing is a position they are already well stocked in with Martinelli and Trossard, so it's not like they're short in that position either, as they are certainly short in the centre forward role, which is what we're going to come on to in a second. But yeah, if they are going to be patient on a position, the left wide forward role is probably the one that they can afford to be the most patient in, but they need to be sensible. They need to recognise that contingencies are needed. And the good thing about that is, of course, that Andrea Berta is a sporting director who is very much across a lot of targets. If you think back more than a couple of months ago, I was one of the first people, of course, to talk about how Andrea Berta works. We did a piece, of course, about why you can expect to see a lot of links to lots of different players during this window, and that's because Andrea Berta loves to do the talking with plenty of targets and get the lay of the land and kind of have discussions going over multiple different profiles in case one doesn't work out, so they can pivot to another if indeed they need to. So that gives me some encouragement that there is a need to be, or rather a reason to be patient when it comes to Rodrygo. And then you've got these other two players that have been linked to, I don't know if you've heard of them. Is it Sesko and Gyokeres? I think that's what they're called. Apparently, they're two centre forwards. You may have heard of them that have been linked with the club over a certain period of time. It's Gyokeres and Sesko. Of course it is. How could I be so... I've been out the loop for so long, my mind started to go. But when it comes to these two players, we know that this is the story. This is the one, the two, if you like. These are the players that we are still very much waiting to find a resolution for. If you'd have said to me that we would still not have much of an indication about who was going to be the one that would sign prior to me coming back when I left for Canada, I would have said maybe. But I feel like 2 weeks is a long time in the window, especially, of course, with it coming to the end of June now, that we might have a better indication. What I can tell you is that there is very clear reasons as to why we remain in the position that we remain in when it comes to Gyokeres and Sesko. It's obvious to me, it's been obvious to me for a long time that Benjamin Sesko is the guy that Arsenal, I think Arteta in particular, would rather have. And that Gyokeres is still a player that Arsenal have a lot of appreciation for and have obviously been linked with him since before even Andrea Berta arrived at the club. I remember doing that story in 2024, early in 2024, talking about Arsenal's tabs they were holding on Gyokeres, and that was around April time before the summer window opened. So Arsenal's interest in Gyokeres has not just emerged only when Andrea Berta has arrived. It's been there for a while. But when it comes to the two of them, Sesko is the one that Arteta, for me, certainly what my understanding is, has a preference for. But the issue with the Sesko deal is both his wage demands, it seems. There's been a lot of reports around that. And of course, also the fee that RB Leipzig want. RB Leipzig want between 80 and 100 million euros for Sesko. The sense is that Arsenal want to play something kind of around the 70 million euro mark for Sesko. And of course, would also want that structured in a favourable way. Arsenal don't have unlimited money, and of course they have a lot of positions. Of course, with Partey's future up in the air, it's another area, having lost a player on a free, that they may have to invest a significant fund in replacing him as well. We've got other positions like the defence, of course, the wide player that could be a very expensive deal for Rodrygo. Arsenal need to be careful when it comes to spending to a degree. And I know that will frustrate people. And that's not what you want to hear. But when there's so much that Arsenal want to invest and so much Arsenal want to do during this window, yes, they, of course, want to get the deals done for the best as possible. And you don't do those deals really quickly. They're not deals that get done really quickly. Liverpool with Florian Wirtz, for example, Bayer Leverkusen wanted well over 100 million, and Liverpool have gone, well, we'll pay you a well over 100 million, because when it comes to Liverpool's summer, of course, their needs, their wants are limited to around 3 to 4 players. Arsenal's wants this summer are limited more to around 5 to 6 players, potentially more if Partey leaves. And so you need to be a little bit more careful, of course, when it comes to that investment and how that's structured. And that's why they're paying a little bit more for Zubimendi's deal than his release clause, so that deal can be structured more favourably and enable Arsenal to spend more freely during this window. So that's why it comes down to these two. Sesko is the preference, but the price and the logistics of that deal may mean that Arsenal still end up with Gyokeres, despite the fact that 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, of course, that we're in a situation where the same two names are being talked about. I had a very interesting phone call as well yesterday where I actually was kind of on the discussions around neither of these two coming in, and that instead it could be somebody that we're not even talking about right now. So there is a lot of talks going on in this position. I'm also very conscious, and I was asking the question yesterday to a contact of mine, that there's a real desire for this position to be fulfilled, not just this summer, but early during this window. And that there's a real, I think desperation is the right word, a real desperation from Arsenal fans to have this deal done quickly. Because if it's not done quickly, if it's not, say, brought in before Arsenal fly to Asia on July 19th, if it's not done before, worst case scenario, the first game of the season, if it's not done in a worst case scenario until deadline day, will we care if it is deadline day that Arsenal sign Gyokeres or Sesko or another really top forward? Probably not, but we'd obviously prefer it to be done. And then the longer this situation does trundle forwards and roll forwards throughout the summer window, the more the antagonistic sense, the meltdowns, if you will, those types of feelings will fester and frustration will grow. And you can imagine, of course, that first home game of the season against Newcastle. Another thing we haven't talked about that came out during while we were off air was, of course, it's not Newcastle. Who's the first? It's Leeds. Sorry, it's Leeds. Was the fixtures coming out. Didn't get to react to that because I was away. But Arsenal, a very tough start to the season. Man United away, Leeds at home, Liverpool away, Nottingham Forest at home, City at home. Imagine that first home game of the season on the 23rd of August against Leeds if Arsenal still haven't signed a centre forward. Yes, there'll be some excitement about it being the first game of the season, but if Arsenal have another disappointing, efficient window, you can sense that will come, and I think that will bleed into the crowd's kind of feeling. So, yeah, there is definitely going to be a real sense that we need this striker and we need them done quick. So that's it. Sesko is the number one, as we've always known, but the logistics of that deal may indeed open the door to Viktor Gyökeres because he's available, should be available for cheaper. Of course, you've probably been following the whole fiasco regarding Sporting and the president and the price and the asking and the pact and agreements that have gone on there. That's all very chaotic as well. But either of these two could still yet be at Arsenal between now and the end of the window. I hope more so the end of kind of this period between now and July 19th. But you can be sure that we'll be now live every single morning and giving you every single minute detail of update in that time too. So that's half an hour of news. You know, considering the fact that when I came back, a lot of messages saying nothing's happened. A lot's happened. And we've talked about all of that. Well, now, if you're new to the show for the first time, maybe this is the first show you've tuned in for, in which case you've been very much blessed in terms of the background you've arrived at, rather than the mediocrity that our usual listeners have suffered through for the last however many years. But do make sure you drop a like. Do make sure you subscribe. And do make sure you ask a question by using a little capital Q in the chat box as we go into part 2. Those questions and more right after this. Hello and welcome to part 2 of today's show, where of course we'll be tackling your questions. Can I just say, before I went away, I'm going to be really honest. I was honest before I went away. In fact, I left a little post in the community section, the community tab of this channel. I admitted the anxiety I had. I've done this show for a hell of a long time. We've done this show for about 3 years, 8 a.m. We've done well over 1,000 episodes. And this is the first time I've taken a real break over the course of that kind of period of time. And I was anxious about leaving, about running away for a little bit, taking a break, if you will. But the fact that we've come back and I can see there is over 1,500 of you tuning in for the first time in 2 weeks. I didn't really make much of when I was coming back. I did give you a post yesterday to remind you we were going live this morning. But the fact there are over 1,500 of you in the chat box this morning is just brilliant. So thank you so much, so many of you, for listening and tuning in and coming back. It is greatly appreciated. And I hope that you will continue to come back and listen every single morning. And of course, we will continue to tackle your questions, take your thoughts. As I mentioned in part 1, we will be doing a phone-in show a little bit later on today. So you're going to have 2 shows today. 5 o'clock UK time, we'll be doing a phone-in show. So if you'd like to hop on the show, maybe after work, after school, whatever, make sure you're over the age of 18. So I have to be in year 13 to be at school and still on the show. But when it comes, of course, to those phone-ins, I love integrating so many of you as I can into the channel. I love getting you onto the show. So having been away for so long, I want to give something back to you in that time, and we'll do a phone-in show for you all, 5 o'clock UK time this afternoon. So I look forward to that. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. But we're going to go to part 2 now, which means going into the chat box and tackling some of your questions. Let's go into the chat, of course, and say thank you to our members, of course, who support the channel. Temmie's now been a member for 14 months. Thank you so much, Temmie, for your kind support. Amber Lee's been a member now for 30 months as well. Sweating Merlot, a member for 28 months on the channel. Daniel says another 57 months. We finally know whether it's Sesko or Gyokeres, who, of course, has now been a member for 57 months. And Bakary Lasagna as well says member for longer than a transfer negotiation. 30 months membership with Bakary Lasagna with us on the channel as well. Callum, thank you so much for the kind donation. Callum Christian, Tom, are you doing calls this morning? I am today, this afternoon, 5 o'clock. So that's when those phone-in show calls will be open to you, is this afternoon. So that's when we're going to be doing a show. Right, let's tackle as many of these questions over the next. We're going to be live until 9, so the next 25 minutes or so, we'll try and go through as many of these as we can. And thank you for all the kind messages I can see being read now in the chat box. John says, if Arsenal sign Gyokeres, could Sesko theoretically be a backup plan if Rodrygo falls through? Play on the left for 1 to 3 years, and then step into the striker position. Could they play together? I don't think so, John, in all honesty. I think that Arsenal will look to sign more of a genuine left wide forward, if indeed they go into the market, and try to bring one of those players in. So no, I don't think it will be Sesko as a backup to the wide option. I think it will be Sesko or Gyokeres or somebody else as the centre forward, and then of course a wide player instead of Rodrygo, but not a makeshift option, if you will. Jonas says, Tom, how about Justin Kluivert or Jarrod Bowen as attacking options? I think there'll be players that Arsenal will be more than aware of, but I think they will be targeting potentially high-profile players. Bowen, age profile doesn't really fit, I don't think, but Kluivert has been a player I've been very impressed with, and would be very interested to see how he would get on a club like Arsenal. Lee says, neither will be an Arsenal player. Watkins is incoming. Samuel says, great to have you back. Thanks, Sam. And also very similar comments coming from many of you. Thank you so much as well for the kind words. Abby says, why are we not selling Havertz? Because he's quite good. Rich says, welcome back, Tom. How do you think the Arsenal hierarchy view Gyokeres insisting that he only wants to play for Arsenal? I think that will help his cause. Arteta is very keen on players that want to play for Arsenal. And if discussions and negotiations with Sesko really turn into more of a, wages and high profile transfer fees, and you've got a player in Gyokeres who is, still highly appreciated for what he's achieved, not just, of course, his own desires maybe to play for Arsenal, that I think will help. I think it will be something the club appreciate. Arteta likes players who want to play for Arsenal. So I think that will certainly help Rich when it comes to kind of negotiations and decision-making around those two. But it's still my understanding that Sesko is the preference of those two players. Baz says, I just find it strange that we have known since last season we need a forward. You would have thought the club would know who we wanted and started some sort of talks with agents. Well, they have, Baz. And I think this is obviously a bit of a misconception. It's a tweet I've seen a lot in the last 24 hours and retweeted across my timelines. And I think I'm seeing a lot of it this morning. I think there's a lot of people, sadly, that will mislead you around this. Arsenal have known for a long time. And as I'm telling you, Sesko remains the number one that they want. But transfer talks don't just get resolved, in days just because you know which of the two you want. I think that the misconception is that obviously with Andrea Berta talking to a lot of profiles, it gives this kind of feeling that we don't know who we want or that we haven't decided between X and Y. I think Arsenal, in fact, I know Arsenal, have their list and their priorities and their ABCD plans, whatever you like. But if you can't get the deal done for your plan A, whatever, for the price tag that you think that they're valued, then you don't want to then have to start from plans, or rather from square one on plan B. You want to have already put in work on plan B so that if indeed that you don't get your plan A, that the plan B is much more seamless in those discussions. So it's definitely a mistake to think that Arsenal went into this window and they don't know who they want. They have a number of players that they would like, but they have also this idea that they need to get the players in for the right deal. And if they don't get the player done, if they don't agree that deal early, they're willing, of course, having contingencies available to let that continue on until they get the deals done for those players that they might want. If you want Rodrygo, but you can only get a deal done for, say, Semenyo in the first few weeks of the season for a lesser price, and it wouldn't be that less, by the way, from the sounds of things, you will wait. You will be patient until you can get that deal done for the player that you want at the price that you want. I think there's this feeling that because Arsenal haven't paid the money, that they are showing indecision in what they want to do. There's also a lot of secrecy around transfers, as we know, and just because what we see on the surface, and I use this analogy all the time, but the transfer window for Arsenal and any club is like an iceberg, and what you see on the surface is very much not the full story. We only can talk about what we hear, what we learn, what we know, and in some cases, I can't even talk about what I know sometimes because they're not what I would describe as, when you have conversations off the record, it's just there to inform how you talk about things, where they're not being able to say them equivocally or coherently or even just out there. So that is I think the biggest challenge of now going from just content creator to journalist, is that you have discussions that inform your knowledge without necessarily having to or being able to say everything because reasons. Let's go to Baz. Says, hey Tom, what's your favorite part of your trip to Canada? Did you get to try a pint of dark matter? I didn't try dark matter. It wasn't actually available anywhere I went, which I know a few people said I needed to try it. But we went to a lot of breweries and a lot of different flights and different beers, different local seasonal beers and stuff. So that was really good. Favorite bit, I think, was the Athabasca Glacier. That was a really amazing moment. The picture I put up at the start of the show, the grassy lake by Canmore, that was also a really great walk, and the surroundings and the views were stunning. So yeah, that was definitely a highlight. So the food, went to a brilliant smokehouse in Kelowna called the Hatching Post. That was absolutely stunning as well. So lots of good views, lots of good food, lots of nice drinks, and a nice rest and relaxation as well. Jared says, Tom, have you heard anything about the links with Madueke? Only that for Arsenal have had a long-term interest in him. Before he arrived at Chelsea, they were following him at PSV. But I don't know of anything to suggest that they're going to be moving for him during this window. But he's a Chelsea player, so never say never. Maker Henry, thank you so much for your kind support on the channel. As a brand new member of the show, welcome to the family. It is greatly appreciated. Lucas, is it true that Sesko wants a release clause? Haven't heard that. I know that that's a report. Personally, haven't heard that at all, that he wants a release clause in his deal. If it is true, Arsenal, I would be very, very shocked to agree to that. Arsenal, I can't remember the last time Arsenal had a release clause in one of their players' contracts. There'll be certain clauses, of course, maybe to start discussions or talks, but I've not heard anything to suggest that whatsoever. So no. Callum says, if we want to win the league, I feel we need a war class. I don't know. I've never heard that before, Callum. A war class CDM. And still someone who can step in when Martin Odegaard is not firing. So an attacking midfielder. We need a world-class left-sided player and a striker. I prefer Sesko. Very well summed up, Callum. I think you're right. I think we do need a top-class defensive midfielder. I think we need a war-class defensive midfielder. I would like to see an attacking midfielder come in, as we've talked about. I lean towards Sesko more than Gyokeres. I still like Gyokeres a lot, but I lean towards Sesko. I think we absolutely want to do that. AJ says, Tom, I'm sorry, this is always the case with Arsenal. Barring like 3 windows I can count in my lifetime, we never go above and beyond. Never. And fair enough. I mean, Arsenal, 2 of the last 3 summers, Arsenal have done their business early. We've talked about, absolutely destroying that myth that Arsenal are always slow in the transfer window. We know that's not true, but I think I saw one of the things that when I came back to social media yesterday, I think I saw a tweet from Igal. Igal, who of course has his own channel, Igal Talks Football. And I think he tweeted this little clip of somebody saying that this is the worst or the lowest point of their Arsenal fandom. And I'm like, wow, that is a lowest point supporting Arsenal in 40 years, apparently. There's a clippy, but I didn't actually watch the clip, to be fair, but I could tell that was what was being said with the caption. He's mad that some fans are like that, isn't it? It's crazy. Some fans sit there and feel this is the lowest point of their Arsenal supporting lives. Chris says, how Berta is acting in trying to strengthen our negotiating positions over Leipzig to try and lower the price. I mean, if you are in discussions with a club and know that, and that club know you've got other options, that you're not just, of course, only pining for one player, that does strengthen your negotiating position. So it would be quite a weak position if you only want one player. Anne says, Tom, I saw a report the other day that we're about 10 million euros gap in the value of Leipzig for Sesko. Why does things always seem complicated? I mean, that's quite a simplistic view, isn't it? This idea that if you paid 7 million quid more, you'd get the player. But the reality is very different. It won't just be 10 million. It'll be how that 70, 80, 90 million pound, whatever deal is, or euro deal is structured. It'll be how much wage the player wants. It'll be if he wants supposedly a release clause, which I'd find odd, but let's hypothetically say that's the case. It's so much more complicated than we, as, let's take the journalism hat off, fans think. Transfers are not easy things to do. They are not. When you can just throw the money at a player and get them done, and you've got a lot more freedom and you don't have as many needs, then those deals can be much more straightforward to get done. But the reality is, with the players that Arsenal are going for this summer, and of course the volume of players Arsenal need this summer, it was never going to be a simple one for them. But it's still what I describe as, this early period. I'm on record. If Arsenal don't get key players in before July 19th, then there is a failure to talk about for me. They have to get the players, the priority deals done. And they are doing some of that. Zubimendi, which, by the way, I was listening to the Arscast on the way home from Canada yesterday to get kind of the feel, if you like, of kind of that. And I think it was, I think Andrew was talking about the fatigue he feels, or that there's a sense of fatigue with the Zubimendi situation. And I've talked about this. I think if Zubimendi suddenly came out of nowhere, if it was revealed last week that Arsenal was signing £60 million Martin Zubimendi, we'd be like, wow, what a signing. What a brilliant piece of business. But because we've known about Zubimendi for so long, which is ironic because obviously Arsenal fans are so sick and tired with Arsenal not being proactive and Arsenal waiting too long to get deals done. Well, Arsenal are signing one of the best, if not the best, number 6 on the market this summer. But because they did it really early, there's not as much of an excitement about that deal, when in fact it's actually a really exciting transfer. But because it's been known about for quite some time, psychologically we are kind of fatigued with it, and it's taken somewhat of the shine off that deal. That is one of the best deals of the summer. No doubt about it. No question. But because we are so fatigued and bored of that transfer, we've kind of lost the energy for it. We've lost the the gloss of that deal. So, yeah, I think that it's always complicated with Arsenal because transfers are complicated. It sounds boring, but it's true. I was in Canada, Wesley. Thank you for asking. Welcome back, says Kian. Thank you, Kian. It's good to be back. Love the new background, says Dan. Thank you. Yeah, let us know. As I said, this space here, there is going to be something done with the scarves that so many of you have donated very kindly to the channel from the supporters club around the world. So they're not gone. They're over there. You can see them. Yes. Hoodie Gooner says, welcome back, Tom. Thoughts on Lyon possibly being relegated? Anyone in their squad that we should go for? I mean, Cherky looks quite good, doesn't he? But he's already gone to City. Looks quite a good player. Other than that, I can't say that there is anyone that necessarily stands out wildly in that team. Thiago Almeida, of course, was very, very highly rated indeed. But I don't know when indeed he made that switch. But got Malik Fofana, of course, been linked with Chelsea recently as well. Georges Makadadze, I can't pronounce the the Georgian pronunciation. Kvaratskhelia is much easier for me, but Makadadze, I don't know too much about, but also said to be more the highly rated players in the team, but none of them are standing out greatly. Bakaya Martinelli says, hi, Tom, in your opinion, will the Club World Cup have a positive or negative impact on European teams playing in it, both their league and Champions League campaigns? I think that it will have a negative impact for those that don't go far in it. Obviously, I think those that go far, there's a massive monetary benefit that will help them in the transfer window. But for those that, like Atletico Madrid, that have gone out in the group phase, for instance, the fatigue, the lengthening of the season for those teams, there can't be a benefit. There cannot be a benefit for those teams, and is still, to me, it's ridiculous, that competition, to me anyway. Let's go. Rakesh says, Tom, why are the new episodes not on Amazon? Good question. I don't think that Amazon is any longer supported, to my knowledge, by Acast. I don't want to say that wrongly, so I don't know if that's 100% the case. But if you, of course, were listening on Amazon podcasts, you can still listen on Spotify. You can still listen on Apple Podcasts, but I don't think the podcasts go out on Amazon anymore, if they did. So apologies for that, but there's nothing I can do. It's not in my control, that side of it. It's we go through Acast. They upload the podcast to the different platforms that they are supported or are supporting. So yeah, apologies if you are an Amazon Music listener, but you can listen to the podcast on Apple. You can listen to it on Spotify. I think there's quite a lot of other platforms as well. Let me see. A quick check. Pocket Casts, Overcast, Castbox, Podbean. It does say Amazon here. I don't know if that's now gone down, but it does say Amazon. But I'm not in control of the platforms. I'm afraid. Just I upload them to Acast and it just goes out. But you can always find them on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Jack says, Tom, who made the cannon for you? It looks good. We had it made ages ago. Let me see if I can find the answer to that question of who made the cannon logo neon sign. Let me see if I can find. I might not be able to find it. I can't remember the email because it was a long time ago. So nothing's coming up. So I'm afraid, Jack, I can't. If you search online, if you want neon signs made, there are places that will do that for you. Nice 42 Biko says, Tom, is it 100% confirmed that Sesko's demands are a problem? It seems like because of the lack of activity, ITKs are regulating or regurgitating news and cooking up stories for engagement. There's definitely a feeling that with Arsenal, wanting to be patient and get those deals done eventually rather than quickly and just spend money hand over fist to get them done quickly, that because, of course, there's this wait, there's this delay, even though it's not late in the window at all, we're still very far from it being late in the window, that I think there's a vacuum that's been created and that needs to be filled by people creating engagement. So just take things with a pinch of salt. Obviously, I think that the player will want to get a good wage. Obviously, I think discussions over a player's wages are not easy to do. So I'm not going to sit here and say that it's fine, the personal terms are absolutely good and that it won't be a problem, because we don't know that. But you absolutely should be cautious about believing everything you read or that people say. So, yeah, that gives you some context. Jakey says, what about Wilshere taking the vacant assistant manager's job as well? Definitely a player that Arsenal, not a player, coach that Arsenal will be very aware of his abilities from his time at the club, but don't know if that's something that he wants to do or if the club want to do as of yet. Soup says, would have made sense to have made the Club World Cup more of a pre-season tournament. I mean, it feels like that, doesn't it, in a way? But it just feels like a distraction, if anything. Now, the quality of the football has not been particularly great. It's not. I don't think it's been a successful tournament so far. I don't think it's disproved any of the feelings that people had about the tournament whatsoever. Neil says, what have I walked into? The iconic Tom is back. Made my week. Well, thank you, Neil. That's very kind of you. Pranjo says, I always listen to your podcast on my way to the office while driving, which takes about 45 minutes. Well, I'm glad we're bringing the pod back for you, Pranjo. So I'm glad that you're listening. Dan says, I think that you should get the Arsenal logo on the inside of the blind. That would look so cool. I would do that, but it's like, when you make like a homemade fan and it's like the corrugated iron style, it's like that when it goes up. So that would be very difficult to do. It's not like a flat blind surface. So I know what you mean, but that'd be pretty tricky. Let's go to Maximius says, hi, Tom. Good to see you back. Do you think any of the Premier League clubs will realistically offer 200 million for Isak? That's what Newcastle are demanding. I'd be very surprised. I'd be very, very surprised. I know there's a lot of noise around Liverpool and Isak. I'd be shocked if that deal happens. Utterly shocked if that deal was to go through. AFC Tiladai says, Tom, great to have you back. Now Arsenal can get back to business, but what do you think that we want more? A 9 or a left-sided player? The feeling is a 9, but as I have talked about on the show before, Sesko and Gyokeres are kind of, because Isak is not attainable, the best of what is available. And so Arsenal, if they feel that Rodrygo is a better option for them this window and that's a player that would get them more, they will prioritize that because they ultimately want the best quality available for the needs that they have. And if they can't get that, they won't just spend for the sake of spending. You know how this game works. You know how it goes. So it depends upon the player more than the position, I think, is probably the right answer to that question. Who is my choice for the number 2 manager, says Joe, if I had to choose? It's honestly a question that I don't have a great feeling for or a great obvious answer for. Jack Wilshere, great. Santi Cazorla I would like just because I'd like Santi Cazorla. There's no real kind of analytics or reasoned answer behind that. He's never been in that position before. I'd just love to see it. So I guess the answer to that is Santi Cazorla, but I don't even know if he's going to stop playing at this point in time. Thank you, Stephen, for your kind comments. Sabre says the toxicity of not signing a 9 would be unbearable. Absolutely. Knowledge says people only talk about the Club World Cup from an EU perspective. What about the other continents and the competitions? My only complaint about the Club World Cup is how it's run, but the competition is good for the sport. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about for those clubs outside of Europe, it's definitely a benefit. It's definitely an improvement for those clubs. But for the European teams, there is also no doubt that it's not the best situation as of yet for them. Ty says, hi, Tom. What are the odds the Arsenal media team are getting us excited about Sesko and Gyokeres and Rodrygo only to get us and Kunku and Madueke? I don't think they're very high, mate. I don't. But watch me get proven wrong. But I don't think the odds are very high of that. Harj says, hi, Tom. Do you think that things might pick up now that the same clubs need to sell before the start of July? I heard Villa have a PSR deadline, so they need to sell. Yeah, without a doubt, July will be a touchstone moment for the window, and I think a lot more will kick off after July is underway. Definitely so. Quest for the Best says, how do you feel about Martinelli's links to Bayern? I don't really have a feeling about it, to be honest. I'd be very surprised if that happened. Very, very surprised indeed. So I'm not expecting that to happen. But again, the transfer window does throw out things that we don't expect. Brendan says, credit where it's due. We have the two best options in attack pretty much just working with us as well. In terms of who, Brendan? I mean, we have the two best strikers on the market right now as our two options, which is obviously a positive thing. But if that's what you meant, then I kind of get it. Jamil says, except Rodrygo, how confident are you the players that we're linked with well enough to get us over the line are next season? If Arsenal have the window that I hope they have, which is, Sesko, Rodrygo, Zubimendi, if Partey goes, then a Gooner, a defender, Kepa, and a luxury sign would be another attacking midfielder, then without a doubt I'd have loads of confidence. But until we know what they've got, it's very difficult to have that feeling, isn't it? Very difficult to know what might happen. Right, that is going to bring us to the end of today's show. It's good to be back. Thank you so much for your kind comments, your kind words, the donations that some of you have left. It means a hell of a lot to see. As I said before, well over 1,500 of you listening to our first show back in 2 weeks. I'll be back with you later on this afternoon, where we'll be talking, of course, about Arsenal with you. The phone-in show will be back 5 o'clock UK time this afternoon. I'll be getting some of your thoughts, some of your feelings, getting some of your words. I can get I feel like in my throat I have not been talking for this early for a long time. I can sense my body is reacting to this. I'm not used to it anymore. I need to get match fit again. But I hope you've enjoyed this return. I hope you've enjoyed this show. I hope you've enjoyed the show being back. I hope you enjoy our new background, all the new aesthetics of the channel. Your membership, your donations always get pulled back into the channel. It's been a massive investment to do this job, to do this conversion and to build this studio. And it's not finished yet. There's still things that need to be done, but we are underway inside of the new studio. So thank you for everything. And I'll be back with you later on this afternoon. Of course, I'll be back with you tomorrow morning. Refreshed. I am. Paul says, Tom, you look sound more relaxed. I am. I'm definitely more energized. I'm definitely ready for this summer. I'm definitely ready to get back underway. I needed that break. It was such a necessity, and I'm glad I had it. And now we're ready to go. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for your likes, your subscriptions, and all the usual stuff. See you this afternoon. See you tomorrow morning. And as always, stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, and up the Arsenal.